Hi, and welcome to Lesson 3.8, Rates, Ratios, and Percents. So, ratios, rates, and percents are all things you've been working with for years now. In this lesson, we are just going to look at the correlation or relationship between the three different terms. So first, starting with some simple definition examples. If A and B are two quantities measured in different units, so if A and B are quantities with different units, then the rate of A per B is written as A divided by B, or A over B. So if we're dealing with two quantities, A and B, the rate of A per B would be A divided by B. If they wanted the rate of P per, or of B per A, that would be B divided by A. So the word per means divide. Rates are often expressed as unit rates. A unit rate is a rate per one given unit, such as 60 miles per 1 gallon, or dollars per apple. So if we're looking at the idea of rates, we know it's written as a fraction or with the word per. Ratios can also be written as a fraction, one over another, and percents can be calculated from rates and ratios. All percents are a special type of rate or ratio based out of 100. So a percent is always based out of 100. So in example 1, they ask us to find each unit rate. So we're trying to figure out the unit rate. So if we have 290 miles with 12.1 gallons of gas, I want to find my unit rate of miles per gallon. So I'm going to do my miles over gallons. So 290 miles divided by 12.1 gallons gives us our unit rate of 23.97 miles per gallon. If we spent $2.50 for 5 apples, if I wanted to know the price per apple or dollar amount per apple, I would do my dollar amount, $2.50, divided by the 5 apples to get my unit rate of 50 cents per apple. Now, average speed is a way, or averages are another way that we can use unit rates. So we're averaging it out of 1 unit. So in this case, if we had 3 kilometers over 40 minutes, then we would do 3 kilometers divided by 40 minutes, and this should be 0.075 kilometers, not per hour, but per minute. That was a mistake on my part. Unit there should be MIN for minutes. So if we're trying to find an average speed, we'll always be dividing by time. So it's the distance or the amount divided by time. So if you're swimming, distance, kilometers divided by time. If we're reading, it'd be pages divided by time. So 115 pages per 2.5 hours. So 115 divided by 2.5 tells me that they're reading at an average speed of 46 pages per hour. So an average is a special type of unit rate. And then example 3, write each decimal or fraction as a percent. Now remember, decimal representation is one way we can represent a ratio. Another way would be as a fraction. So a decimal representation, 0.42, is the same as 42 over 100. Now, to convert any decimal to a percent, you take the decimal and you simply multiply it by 100, and that'll convert it to a percent. So really, multiplying by 100 is the same as moving the decimal point 2 spots to the right. So if I have 0.42 multiplied by 100, 0.42 decimal 2 spots to the right gives me 42%. And B, 0.085 multiplied by 100, move the decimal 2 spots to the right, and we have 8.5%. And then in C, 1.7 times 100, 1.7 times 100, you move the decimal 2 spots to the right, giving us 170%. You add that 0 when we move the decimal 1 spot, we get 17. One more spot, we have a blank, so that's where the 0 comes from, giving us 170. Now to convert a fraction to a percent, the easiest way to do that is to first convert the fraction to a decimal and then multiply by 100. So to convert a fraction to a decimal, we do top divided by bottom. So 3 divided by 5 is 0.60. So that gave me my decimal. And to convert the decimal to a percent, I multiply by 100. So 0.60 times 100 gives me 60%. In E, I have 7/8. 7 divided by 8 is 0.875. Then to convert from the decimal to a percent, we multiply by 100, so it's 87.5%. And in F, 5 divided by 16 to get our decimal, 0.3125, multiply by 100, so move the decimal 2 spots to the right, and we get 31.25%. So fraction first to a decimal, top divided by bottom, then from a decimal to a percent, multiply by 100. And then our last section is looking at converting the measurement. So they give us a measurement, and then in parentheses, they're giving us the unit rate. So for example, in part A, it says 21 inches to centimeters. 1 inch is equal to 2.54 centimeters. So in this case, inches to centimeters, 1 inch is 2.54 centimeters. So I should always have more centimeters than inches. So I know I'm going to take my 21 inches and multiply it by the conversion of 2.54 to give me 53.34 centimeters. In B, we have 24 cups being converted to gallons. 1 gallon is 16 cups. So I know going from cups to gallons, I should have fewer gallons than cups. So instead of multiplying this time, I'll be dividing by the conversion rate of 16. 24 cups divided by 16 cups per gallon gives me 1.5 gallons. And lastly, in part C, we have $180 to pesos. 9.99 pesos is approximately $1. So I'm going to have more pesos than dollars. So in this case, my conversion here was not the correct one, because what I did was went from 180 pesos to dollars. What I should do is go dollars to pesos. So I should take my 180, really bad drawing, 180, and multiply, not divide. So $180 to pesos, I should be multiplying by 9.99. And then 180 times 9.99 gives me 1,000. So I should have 1,798 pesos. So 1,798 pesos and 20 cents. 20. Apologies for the really ugly writing. So $180 times 9.9 pesos would give me 1,748.20 pesos. So now, as you work through the practice, again, be careful with conversions that you don't make the same mistake I did on the last one. Before you decide if you're multiplying or dividing, think which one does it make sense to have more or less of based on the conversion rate, and that should tell you to multiply or divide. So for example here, 9.99 pesos is $1, so I should have more pesos. So again, this division should become multiplication, and that would change our final answer. But otherwise, as you go through today's practice, make sure that you understand the idea of a unit rate. So it's a rate per 1 unit, and then ratios and percents. If we have a ratio, like 3/5, we want to convert it to a decimal first, and then convert it to a percent.